said that he recommended the B3 versus he had the B2, I believe it is. Was the B3
Yeah.
has the hydraulic cylinder on it. So that's what I was going to get in. I was going to get that in the beginning. So after talking to Mike, it was definitely, you know, what was all that?
Holy smokes.
Was
Hey
that you,
y'all,
Ed?
I'm about to jump off here. 4:30, gonna come
I'm
early
thinking it
and take
was.
care.
I had to move my. Give me a minute. I'll move my phone to another room.
They have silence. You can silence them.
Yay.
Night,
All right,
y'all.
all right, night, Morgan.
Night,
Okay, good
Morgan.
night, Morgan. Thanks for
Night,
dropping in.
Morgan.
Oh, no problem. We'll talk to y'all later. Take care. Have a good
All right.
rest of your evening.
Take care.
Bye.
But after talking to him, I'm pretty much confident it's going to do what I wanted to do.
So I've got a
Yeah,
question for
yeah.
you. What is it that you heard from Mike Berry that you didn't hear from Brad or James or who else that you
Well,
talked to
I
about?
watched some of Mike's videos, and I was asking him. I said, I said I seen you trying to push down on the back handle, and I mean, it looked like to me that I'm looking at the balancing factor of the weight on the front and versus you pushing down, and he said a lot of that was because the boxes were stuck, and he had to break them loose, and then once that, and he said also it'll lift up four honey supers without any problem, which and all that. So I was just kind of concerned. I watched a couple of them where they're putting their foot on it. I'm like, well, why are you doing that? This thing here is you're supposed to be able to hit the buttons and lift it up. It's supposed to do the job. So, and he said once it kind of gets up at the tipping point or the balancing point, it stays there. It's no problem.
So it's more about getting the propolis to break loose first.
Hey, honey.
Yeah, I mean, you go in, you grab the box with the lifter part of it, and you kind of put some pressure on it with the hydraulic system, and then you go up there and pop the box. And then the main thing with what Mike said like it's designed to put in a what do you call it, a skateboard, or I said I want to be able to under super. Well, he said, well, that's like putting a skateboard or putting the you're always either under supering and you're kind of lifting the boxes off the top so you can get down in there in the brood area to work. And that's my main goal, where I don't have to lift 4 boxes and they're 50, 60 pounds a piece. This way I can go in, like a scenario would be, let's say I have, let's say I've got three honeys, or let's say 2 honeys, let's say 300. I know the first honey super is probably still empty. Just put it on a couple of days ago, but I can lift those other 2 off and look in there. Let's say it's been a week. I want to check the bottom one. Yes, it's full. Then set everything back down, lift all 3 of them up, slide another empty honey super in, and all that.
So a little thing that I learned, Charlie, and I've had my lift for a while, but I don't know why it took so long for the light bulb to go on for me. But and I will also qualify that people malign these things to no end, but I've never had a real big problem with them. But metal queen excluders versus plastic queen excluders, I have a mix of both, right? Well, I'm
Yeah.
getting rid of those plastic ones because when I go to lift that box to put that escape on, that metal queen excluder is so much easier to deal with, and it comes off of that box so much easier than the plastic ones. That it's definitely worth the extra. And I'll tell you, those metal ones are 3 times the money as the plastic ones. So that's what I'm
I'm reading
changing this
the chat.
year.
Randy's going to order it for me tonight on the chat. Hopefully he'll pay for it. And as far as Russell Koopman goes, I'm not cheap at all. I don't have a problem. I got the money. My bees make money. It's just making sure that I got the right product for what I want to buy.
Absolutely. When I bought it, there was one model. So that's the model I got. Right. I had no choice. That was it. but it's worked well for me. I really
As
enjoy
far
it.
as queen excluders, I have a lot of my queen excluders are wooden bound, and they are
Yeah.
metal. I never did like plastic. And at the time, I liked the idea of the wooden bound, and they weren't too expensive. Now they are expensive. I'd buy the straight steel screens.
I just use the metal bound. They're a
If I was
band like
buying
the
any
heavy
more
duty
to be
men
all
like
metal,
one.
I would not buy the wooden bound. They're too much money.
They're $15 for me now, which is just really going to hurt. But I have to buy. I don't know. I have to buy 50 of them or something in the spring. So that's
It's
going to
$15 for
really
just
hurt.
metal bound.
For me, I think they're about 15 for the heavy duty metal bound. There's
I'm
two
looking on
kinds
the.
at my store.
I'm
One's
really
cheaper
liking
than the
this
other.
No Life Beekeeper chat. Somebody already has one of these. I don't know. I guess it's the American made model of the hive lifter. It looks kind of like Joey's, but
Hey, you guys are talking about plastic excluders. So a tip for a guy that has to use them right now because of cost: run your hive tool under all of the whole, as much around the hole underneath you can, because anybody in here who bottles or who labels their bottles knows when you pull that label off of that sticky piece of paper, that label is going to curl up. So the same thing with the excluder. When you rip that thing up, you get a little hold under it and you tear it up, you're basically doing the same thing. It's going to start, getting a curl to it. So if you run a hive tool around the underneath of that, it helps. It won't
There's
stop
something
it.
about that dynamic, when I lift those supers with my lifter, and I got to take the queen that queen excluder will stick to the honey supers every single time instead of the brood chamber. I want it to stick to the brood chamber, and I've been racking my brains to come up with some kind of a solution to say, what can I put in there that'll make that thing stick to the brood chamber and not short of putting a screw through the thing when I put it on.
I have to
Which I
laugh,
guess
Brad.
I could.
Sorry I'm late, guys. I got a text from a guy at the University of Georgia, so I ran out to my bees and pumped the boxes full of helium, so that's why I'm a little late.
Did they fly away?
Funny, Todd.
I saw Mike Trevis got a new hive lifter. I think he got the same one Joey got. Got the American flag.
that's the American. That's the American model. That's not from Boris.
Alpha tape, sure.
That's the one like the guy out in Alabama or someplace.
Who? Joseph? Joey?
Yeah.
He's in Louisiana.
No, it's a guy. It's not. He doesn't come out on the chats.
Vaseline.
He's either. He's in Alabama, I think.
Let's see. I haven't see people asking about the Hilco equipment. I don't have any experience with it personally myself, so I went with license. So
They're Bob Moore's Homestead. He's got a question there.
Yeah, I was reading
Bring that up
question.
about brood in the.
What are the disadvantages of having brood been previously laid in your honeycomb? Well, it makes harvesting honey 10 times harder, for one.
Yeah,
And-
if it's in there when the honey is in there, for sure.
And during storage,
Where's you're trying to pull honey, where's your queen? Figure out where the queen is. And your queen's in danger. When you have a queen excluder and you're quite certain the queen is in the bottom, you start working on the queen excluder, you've got a different situation. You're not going to have a queen in the upper boxes. So, I was saying you can slam things around more, but I'm just saying you're not potentially endangering the queen up there.
Yeah, somebody was mentioning storage, I heard.
I don't like having brood comb up in my supers because then I can't store them outside
Mm-hmm.
because then the small hive beetles and the wax moths will get in it.
Yep.
And then
That's
your
right.
comb gets dark looking. And
Yeah.
and it with that cocoon in there, it's harder to cut with your plane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your wrist is going to be killing you if you got a knife.
You got a
My
knife.
capper doesn't care. My Cowan doesn't care. It's cut
I got a Max and uncap and planer, but
That's what I have.
Yeah, but if you have a knife and you're cutting that brood comb,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's a little tough.
My uncapper's got knives.
Steam heated.
Steam heated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I overkill on my equipment. It's much more than I need right now, so it makes the job quick. Cleanup takes longer than uncapping typically.
I've been watching some people's videos from the conference, and have any of you guys seen that comb honey they had with the? I think it's Simply Comb
Simple
or
comb.
Simply Bees. Yeah,
Simple
that
comb.
You
those
mean the
little.
plastic trays that make the comb?
Yeah, what'd you think about those?
Well, I know
Sound like it
Dirt
was
Racer had
$80 a box.
I've seen it there. I've looked at them. I don't have the experience with combed honey, but
Oh, you also have to wax all of them.
Yeah.
You have to paint wax in all of them. So,
is that right?
Is
mhm.
is it a synthetically drawn comb? Is that what this is?
No, it's a cut comb honey tray that you put in your frame, and then you just pop it out and close it, and it's done.
Oh yeah,
Go-
I used some of those years ago. They call it BioPack, and it actually worked pretty good. I did have to wax it. I had to just paint a little bit of wax on the bottom, and
Yeah.
it worked pretty darn good.
Bring up
It's a
Morris's
half
reply
comb,
there,
though.
Bob.
It's a half comb, so when I make
Yeah,
comb honey,
you get 8
it's
in each frame.
both sides of the comb with the midrib in the middle, whereas the pack is the midrib, and then you get half the comb.
Right.
Yeah, worked good.
Let me answer this. What you need to do is you keep your queen excluder on, but bring up some open cell brood into your honey supers. If you only have foundation, that's going to be a bait frame,
Bait
and
frame.
the smell of that will draw up the nurse bees through the queen excluder along with the rest of the bees, and that's how you'll get them to draw your comb out and everything.
Works good for making splits as well.
Morris Homestead, I had exactly the same problem my first year. I got frustrated with the queen excluders because I didn't have drawn comb, and I ended up taking them out. And then I had to deal with all the brood in the honey supers. And so then the second year, I learned how to use them exactly the way Charlie just said.
Right.
Just use bait frames. Just pull a bait frame up, and Bob's your uncle, as they say.
And it works great for splits too. So you can shake all the bees off of those brood frames and put that excluder down there, put your new box on top, and put those new frames on top, and a little while later you come back and all the nurse bees come up onto those frames. You can just pull them right out. You know the queen's down on the bottom. You're not worried about grabbing her. Unless you're Bob, it doesn't matter if I got a titanium queen excluder. She
She'll get through.
still finds her way up there sometimes.
And you know what's another nicety about that method, Bob? Is you take that split, and guess what's in there? What did you just say? You got some brood, and what do you got? You got bees in there? What kind of bees do you have in there?
Nurse bees.
You got nurse bees. Well, guess what nurse bees don't know how to do?
Fly.
They don't know how to go outside, right? So guess what you have now? Now you got a little split that you just made above this hive, and you think about this 2 feet or 2 miles, don't apply because these bees have never been outside. You take that little split, you put that thing anywhere you want, and they're going to stay in that box because they're nurse bees. And that's the real nice thing about that method.
Who's playing the slot machine?
Yeah, I know what that noise
That's
is.
all I can hear.
That's not me.
If someone wants to play a video game, do it on mute or
I
leave.
think it's
One of the two.
Some of Bob's stuff. He must be truck driving.
Not me.
There's a video from Jake Moore on splits. He just rang my bell on this. His last name's Moore, 2-0. Sorry. The way he had it, I haven't tried it. It's pretty interesting. The way he does his splits, is he evens out all his brood and then he stacks all his boxes. He doesn't find a single queen, not one queen, right? Just stacks all his boxes 10 high, right? And then lets the bees kill all the queens, then pulls all the boxes off and just adds new queens. Look it up. It's interesting. It's
Seems like a lot of work to me.
It sounds like no work, right? You just even out your brood in your boxes. Huh?
You got to stack them. I mean,
oh yeah, that is work. That is work. Yeah,
You got a fancy lifter like Charlie.
And then you got to unstack them.
yeah.
But I mean, as far as time's concerned, right? If you just look up the video and watch it, you'll be like, oh, that's
If
interesting.
you can't bring yourself to pinch a queen, that sounds like a great
Yeah.
method. Just
Yeah,
let them fight it out.
I mark my virgin queens, so I never have a problem finding queens.
Yeah, he's talking about in thousands of hives, thousands of colonies.
Yeah, when you running that much, you have to find them.
So he's basically
I avoid
stacking all the
finding
brood
queens.
up and letting the bees equalize themselves on the frames.
He's equalizing the brood in the boxes, which equalizes the bees in the boxes afterwards, and then also the distress of it all makes the queens all, the bees get rid of all the queens, and then he just goes in afterwards and adds a queen to every single box.
See, that's the kind of method you can use if you've got a crew and the crew just need a job. They say, okay, do this, and you can just train them to do a job, and that's the kind of method that's great for that.
I see Brian from Flower Street just came in. I wanted to say I enjoyed those videos you made with Mark Miller.
Grab a drink, guys. I'll be right back.
So that was Brian. Oh, never mind. I was thinking something else.
Yeah, Brian Coper just got in here too.
Yeah, that's who I put. I saw both that at the same time. So
Yeah.
mixed up.
So if Bob walks out of the room and everybody goes quiet.
Yeah, talking about that there combed honey. What do you call it? What would you call it? The way of doing it.
Yeah,
If you got to wax the darn plastic, I don't see the too much. I mean, they want too much money for what you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that link in there. $80 for a stack of what they call a single pack.
Yeah,
I put the link in
$5
the chat.
Trooper?
But you get 80 packs out, so they're saying you got $1, in your cost. So
that's a lot.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Somebody was screwing up. The management came in. The CEO showed up at the employee meeting. We're all screwed.
I'm trying out my phone here. I'm not down in my office.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you hear me? I'm coming
Sounds
through.
good.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Good.
Hey, Ian.
How's everyone?
Ian, have you tried helium yet?
Have I tried? What?
No context at all. Just if you tried helium.
He said it's not a gas.
Gas.
Not a gas.
Light control.
Not a gas.
I thought it was an inert gas. You said, Tom.
I said it's not. It's an inert material.
Oh,
I brought up gas because the only thing I know about science is inert gas, the noble gases they call them.
Yeah.
All Brad knows is about having gas.
I know about having gas, but Ian can attest.
That's inert gas.
Yeah, I put that link to that video in the chat here. If any of you are in
private chat.
Yeah, I don't know how to put it in the regular chat.
Yeah, you
I'll
probably
copy
can't.
the link there and paste it.
That'd be an interesting thing to watch.
It was one of those things I was like, that's kind of ingenious, It might just be common practice, and it was just new to me. But
Well, all I can say when I talked to Dr. Dave Peck the other day, I really piqued his interest because he knew what I was talking about, what I was doing. He just didn't
Good.
know the details of it.
Good. Enough said, though, if you're not going to tell us what it is.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I can't.
Don't give out any
Shut
more
up,
info.
Tom.
I will this summer. I might be able. I should be able to.
Okay, well, get back to us.
Well, tell us first then.
Well, Tom, is it something that's chemical, or is it something?
No, it's not a chemical.
It's
Oh,
something
okay.
that's mechanical,
Everything
like
is chemical.
applied, or
No, I changed the environment inside the box. That won't hurt the bees, but it hurts the mites.
does it have to do with temperature?
Nope.
Not temperature.
Or it's got to be CO2.
CO2?
You know, Ian's going to be coming on
we
every
didn't say
stream.
no to CO2.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, he's going to be
We
laying in
didn't
bed.
say
What the hell
no
is
to
it?
CO2.
James was with that last year. That's how James came out of the barn so clean.
If it's not chemical and it's not mechanical, I think he's just going in there and he's using the wrong pronouns on the mites, and they're just like, "Oh, we're out of here."
They're all in a fetal position in the corner. He didn't say no to CO2, so I think we've.
No, it's not.
narrowed it
It's
down
not
here.
That's not
CO2
a
either.
gas, though.
Oh, come on, it's
not
got to
a
be
gas.
CO2.
It's not a gas.
It's not a gas.
Son of a beehive.
It's dry ice. That's not a gas.
I could say, but I'm not.
Fire.
We should work on Charlie now.
Fire.
We'll
Okay,
crack Charlie.
Someone
I'll go
bribe
talk
him
to
with a
Boris.
hive lifter. Have a
I'll
hive
go talk to
lifter
Boris
on
and I'll
his
say
floor.
no hive lifter for Charlie until he tells me what's in that hive.
Well,
So Charlie, is it mechanical? Is it
No,
is it chemical?
I'm not really sure how to explain it. He was explaining it to me, and I wasn't quite comprehending it. But
Oh, dang.
Tom, why are you letting the cat out of the bag to everybody? You better ixnay.
Hey, I kept it quiet for 2 years so far.
Well,
Oh, you've mentioned this before. I know.
Yeah, I
young
did
fella.
pre-mention it. Premature, yeah. When I was just in the process of doing some tests.
You know, the problem
months
with you
before
can't be mentioning it and then keeping it secret because you're not going to be able to patent it anyways. Because you when you mention it, you create prior art. So it's
The funny thing about it, I don't even know if I can patent it.
is it water?
You can patent a process.
is it water?
Water.
he's got to write a paper.
Bees will
Scuba
drown.
diving bees.
Little Don Ultra.
If it was water, then Ian would have had no mites in
Oh, yeah.
2022.
Yeah, it works. It kills the bees too, though.
Unwelcome side effect for killing the bees as well. That's now this is supposed to be No Mite Monday, and we've pretty much exclusively
We've talked
talking
about
about mites all show.
There, Morris has got another question there about Apis biologic when he should feed it. I think
I like the rocket fuel.
Start feeding it when you can.
I feed it in the fall, so they have it throughout the winter,
Ian's
No,
the expert
I'm
on that.
I do it right in the spring.
or you can do it in the spring. I
Yeah.
talked to Ashby, and he's going to start. He didn't know a lot about it, and I convinced him enough. He's doing nukes and whatever. I said, feed it in the spring. He feeds like a couple months in advance. I think, well, you do also, Ian. You knew more about it in the spring than I do, but I told him it would build his nukes up, and he won't have to worry about finding any brood. There'll be plenty of brood when they makes up the splits and stuff for his nuke sales.
Yeah, so the whole intent is to try to bring nutrients to the colony, which they wouldn't otherwise have. And so if pollen's flowing, I could tell guys if they're in a good area with pollen, save your money because you have the nutrients you need. But I was just talking to a beekeeper last night, actually. He was buying some wax, and or the night before, I mean. and he was talking about a drought we had back in 2013, and then we had one back in 2021, and he was saying like that's the perfect time to use supplements is when you know that the pollen coming in isn't nutritious, so you got to fill in those blanks, right? So that's the only purpose. That's the way I use it. I use it in a way to try to fill in the spaces. So in the spring, I don't have any pollen here right off the start, so I'm feeding that to try to help provide the nutrition. As soon as the pollen's coming, then save your money, right? And then later on in the season, maybe we get some weather come in. I'll feed it at that time too. And then in the fall, right after the canola's done and they're starting to brood up for winter, I'll feed it, and then I'll stop so they clean up before they go into the shed. So that's how I feed it. It's expensive. Well, it's not really expensive, but it's cost. So you don't want to feed it if you don't have to. That's my approach.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, for patties, I find I don't know, the pollen, like you say, the pollen starts to come in pretty early. And as soon as that natural stuff comes in, they're not going to eat any kind of patties. And I did feed some of my nukes late summer when the pollen kind of diminished, and they seem to eat it right up and all that. But
yeah, they just love the stuff. Even when the dandelion's blooming, maybe it's missing a few there, and the bees keep consuming it. So actually, I'll keep feeding it just because the damn stuff works so well, and I just like to build brood. But
I feed it in the fall and fill them up with that apis. And to me, my analogy is the fact that it takes your sugar water and turns it into nectar. It gives it all the same properties of nectar. And my term of that is that your bees will survive off of sugar water, but when you put apis in it, it turns into nectar, and they thrive off of it.
Yeah, stimulative. Yeah.
I mean, they really just.
Yeah. I'm planning on using it this about 3 weeks before the first pollen shows up, just to give them a little head start.
Yeah, that's how I use it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was going to just jump in with the comment about cost came in, and I think it's one of the best values ever, because there's a lot of science behind it, and I mix up 1,000-liter tote of syrup, and that costs me $1,200, and I'm buying sugar. That's less money than it costs Ian to buy syrup.
And it's so cheap, you can just let it run out onto the ground.
And I just pump it out on the ground. If you watch my videos, you'll know. It just goes everywhere. Oh man, you had to open that wound again, didn't you, Charlie?
Yeah, cost is one thing. The purpose
We
is
love
another
you,
too.
Brad.
Yeah, we're trying to focus on purpose.
For $1,200 in that tank, and for $75, I've got Apis Biologics in it. So I'm not really thinking about, and Ian's right. Purpose is different. You do need a purpose for this stuff. It's kind of pointless to do, because $75 is $75, and I'm not feeding one toad in the fall. I'm feeding 3. So there's more than $75. I can't do the math, but it's $225. So all I'm saying is, for the value of this stuff, you go and look at any other supplement. This stuff is almost free. It's crazy how cheap.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because you start doing the math to map like Hive Alive liquid, and for the same price that you're doing 1,000 liters, you would have to buy a ton more Hive Alive to do it.
You'd have to buy $800 worth.
$800 worth. Yeah.
I just put Pro Health in one of these tanks, and I put it in to preserve the syrup. That cost me $150 for that gallon of Pro Health. Right? Yeah. That stuff isn't going to do anything like Apis Biologics is going to do, in my opinion.
Nope.
Because of it's kind of snake oil, and it's kind of like, yeah, hey, my bees look good. Apis Biologics has proven, it's got proven science in it, not just hey, my bees have a shiny.
It's proven just in looking at your hives. When your hives, like mine, came through this past winter into spring. And I had brood from the bottom board to the top, bees from the bottom board to the top. And then the bees were overflowing like a volcano out onto the ground when I'm trying to get into them. That's a huge difference. And
you know what Ian calls that? A Tuesday.
Yeah.
A what?
Tuesday.
Just a Tuesday. It's like you just open it up.
Yeah. All right. I got a question for Christopher Roop. He's talking about his Super DFM.
Yep, strong microbials.
And it says overwinning small cons with a licensed 6-framer. It was a game changer in his apiary. All right. What did Super DFM actually do to you besides they look good? That's my question with that stuff.
You know what I'm kind of amazed at is there's a ton of people that don't know about Apis Biologics, and obviously way more with Hive Alive. They've done great marketing, but still, I'm still shocked that people have not used it, have not really heard about it. We talk about it all the time. I know not everybody watches this, but
I think it's time. I think it's because they were late in the game. I mean,
I take it to the bee conferences, and it's a chore to try to get people to come over and talk about it, or get them. I say, have you heard about this? No, nobody. Like you say, nobody really knows about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's what, Bob? It's been out more than about a year, right?
It's been retail for over a year.
So
a couple of years.
I know DC said it's not been around that long, but a year is long enough. There should be more people trying it, or less people saying.
I was the first distributor in the States, and it was October of 22 when I got it to sell here.
Well,
right.
I guess,
it was already out in Canada before then. I was just the first one in the States.
That's the point. I guess I'm just kind of amazed that Ian has been talking about it so long, and it finally came out.
Well, right there's your answer, Todd.
What's that?
Is that if you don't subscribe to Ian's channel,
you're missing out.
Or if you're not, I mean, let's face it, we're all YouTubers here. And look at look at Cayman and his conference. Who goes there? It's a YouTube creator, beekeeper convention.
And
that's why there's 3,000 people there, because they're YouTubers.
And it calls it rocket fuel, Charlie. So we got to educate everybody to what rocket fuel is. It's the same challenge.
There's a Friday night bee chat prior to mine that I go to. It's local. It's up in Westchester, PA. Ian was in that chat a couple of years ago. He didn't know me very well at the time, but I asked him about the hive lifter and why he used that versus the skid steer and all that.
He's still talking about it.
And
bought the goddamn thing.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is I got in there and I talked about Apis Biologic in that chat one night, and I told him, the results and stuff like that. Oh, we all had results like that, because it was a good beekeeping year. They were downplaying it for fair. And I got a little bit irate with them. I said, you people you never used it. You don't know nothing about it. And don't sit here and tell me that it was because of the year. I said, I know better. I said, this stuff works beyond. And I said, you guys don't even get on YouTube, do you? No. I said, well, there you go.
Yeah. Well, so just let it be. Your bees are doing good, right? So.
Proof in the pudding.
I tried to talk to a guy about it.
I run all mediums. I run 3 mediums. The normal prior to Apis Biologic, I can tell you what's going to happen. The bottom box is completely empty of everything. There might be a handful of bees in there, and all the rest of the bees and brood is up in the 2 top mediums. And last year it caught me off guard. Like I said, it was brood in every box and bees in every box, and I'm talking about just jam-packed, overwhelming amount of bees. I'm like, holy smokes. I've never seen beehives like this before. And
Tuesday afternoon.
I started out years ago with Honeybee Healthy, and all those different things. And it's all, I won't say snake oil, but it doesn't give you, for the money that you put out, there's no results as far as population increase or honey increase or any of that kind of stuff.
So
this is the only stuff that I've ever had that works, and the rest of it, like a Super DFM, I'm interested in that. I've been researching. I've been talking to people who had it, and I haven't heard anything that's positive that I really need to buy it or spend it. You know,
Well,
unless you're a pollinator and you're going around the almonds or you're going around apple orchards where they're spraying,
You got to put that.
that might be the product for you, because to get that DFM plus that has the fungicide thing that, you know, gets rid of the pesticide.
E801.
Yeah, it's a binder in there and stuff like that. That would probably work if you're in that situation.
Well, I mean, you're kind of like me in that aspect, Charlie. We've talked about it before. When the only evidence someone can give me is my bees look good,
right?
That is speculative, right? We've done it. We've seen it. We've watched videos. People go out and, oh, my bees look great. And you're like, oh yeah, I see a bee, you know, or, and for them, that might be what good looks like to them. Right. So it's hard to quantify what good is when you're just talking about the appearance of something. Right. And that's what we were talking about with the Apis, and, you know, I don't even sell it anymore. So there you go. So there's nothing, I have no skin in the game. So, I mean, I noticed the same things you did, right? Increased population, which was evident when you opened the box, and it's 2 weeks ago, and I've got slabs of brood in December, right? So it's different. It's different than anything else I've used. And why did I buy it? Because I trusted Ian's opinion, unlike you in the hive lifter after all those years.
Well, even I don't have a.
No, I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. Is with Ian sold it to me and didn't know he was selling it to me, and it wasn't about the product in general. It was monetarily. When I looked at the cost, the input cost for Ian to use it on his colonies, I knew that anybody that's in business would not spend that money if they were not noticing a result, right? It wouldn't make good business sense. And so that was the first reason I ordered it before I started selling it. And then after using it, then it became apparent, right? So good job, Ian.
You want to see, just to change the subject, you want to see something? It's quite relaxing.
Sure.
Yeah, my nice fire going and sleeping dogs. The essence of winter, right?
You know what I really want to see one day?
That's the 2 dog days of winter right there.
2 dog days of winter.
I want to see the closet of stuff that people send you for free, like the overstock that you just get in the mail. Hey, try this out. You know, see what that looks like.
Yeah, it's a closet.
Another barn.
Do you have any bee gems?
All right, good night, guys.
Later, Ed.
Right. See you, Ed.
Night, Ed.
Yeah, I gotta go soon. My battery's going out my phone.
You know, they make power cords for those things.
Tell us the secret
I
before
know.
the battery goes dead.
Well, you're right. I got one right here.
I think it's getting close to your bedtime, you old bastard.
You're
I know,
being
but-
punished for not telling us.
He still has a knobby hangover. He
The
still has a
universe is
knobby
punishing
hangover.
you, Bob.
Hey,
My
You
phone's dying. Oh.
you little kids in a candy store, you have to wait a little bit longer.
We can do it.
Oh, hell.
Yeah, that was Sparky there, 36. He wants to know whether Apis is better in syrup or versus patties.
They're different. They're different.
Different deal.
Yeah, I put it in the syrup right off. But the stuff in the patties, yeah, they're 2 different. Well, they're both a mix of nutrients and other things, but specific to what you would typically find in nectar coming in, and specifically what you would find in pollen coming in. That's the idea behind it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, as far as
Perline's a big one in the syrup. It's almost an attractant in a way. You need Andrew to tell you about the science behind it. But the bees I just find the bees are able to take the syrup more readily, and when it's colder in the spring, I really find a difference that way.
Is the proline what they use to make the royal jelly?
It's a big it's yeah, it's part of it, and they use a lot of proline. It's one of the essentials, but it's not within the list of essentials. So
So
I'm not
Sharon
sure if
said,
the pollen makers add proline or not, but yeah.
Sharon said, I thought Ian tested it on his beef for several years before mentioning Apis.
He did.
Oh yeah. Like Andrew and I have been working on this project. Oh, since I've been doing my blog, he reached out to me because that's kind of my narrative. We're losing the diversity across the landscape. I have no pollen. We got to feed our bees. We got to make a better feed for our bees because I'm throwing these pollen patties in the bush all the time. The bees aren't consuming it. It's pissing me off. I put a lot of money into this protein supplement and they end up not eating it, and I just throw it in the bush. So we need to improve that. So he and I have been kind of working together and trying to find what the reason is they're not taking these patties down as they should, as you think they would. And so we just kind of try to balance out the supplement feed and such. And we went away from producing our own like stock. Those patties are dynamite, just running at a time, and it almost was easier just to outsource the bulk nutrients like Global Patty or Ultra Bee or something like that, and just then mix in the all the micros and the nutrients and all the other stuff he has in there. So
there was a lady at our last North Carolina conference, and she was from Texas A&M, and she was speaking on I think bee nutrition. And at the end of her talk, I caught up with her, and I told her about the apis. I asked her had she heard of it, and she said no. And I told her, about it, that it mimics natural pollen and natural nectar, and she said this is just what we need. So I gave her some of each. So hopefully she's going to run some of that in her testing back at Texas A&M.
Yeah,
Can't
the thing
remember
is
her name.
when the bees are lacking nutrition, or I'll go on my soapbox again. It's all about the microbiome within the gut of the bee, and the bees need proper nutrition to feed that microbiome. So we need like the gut properly set up for them to then metabolize the nutrients that are coming in. And if the gut's unhealthy, it's not going to process those foods into usable nutrients. So it's just about providing the nutrients that they need to be able to use, right? It's kind of interesting because over the last, you were mentioning about no sales and that, and there really is no focus on that. Like he's got a professional job. He and I just are kind of working together on this because he's obsessed about everything science. And he has some bees, and then he just kept getting emails and phone calls and give me the product. So then he put it in a bag, and then he just started selling, and it's just been very organic that way. He has no intention to advertise it, I don't think. It's just word of mouth, and he's just growing the business as it goes. So it's kind of interesting. His website, he should have had his website out for the expo, but I don't think he has. But he does a better job on explaining everything that he's put into there, and he's providing the recipe too, like the nutrients and everything is going to be on that website. He's not really interested in if people are going to rip it off or not. It's just more so he wants to contribute in a lot of ways, and then take the next step forward into something much along the same lines. He's still selling it for money. He is making money at it, but I mean, he only has so much time in a day.
I actually got an invite to go to brunch with Bob Binney and Dr. Lewis Bartlett. So nice. That's in April. So we'll.
Yeah, Steve. Juliana was the one I talked to. Yep.
So I tentatively said I would go. Not that I'm special. I'm sure a lot of people got invited. So going to try to make that one for sure. So
I tend not to say that it would be. Or go ahead.
DC said, Ian, isn't that milk in a wine glass? Is it?
It's eggnog.
Vegan eggnog.
Yeah, a bit of Kraken.
It's premium grade.
But it's like, well, if the end said, you can put any kind of patty out there with this in it or anything, but as soon as the natural stuff comes in, the bees are just not going to take it. They're going to go for the natural stuff. So you have to get it out there earlier before the natural stuff starts to pop. That's what I found. But as far as the apis going into the sugar water, I mean, I do it in the fall, and I think that when they start brooding, they got that right there in the hive, ready to go. They got the right enzymes and all the good stuff that's in pollen or in nectar in that sugar water, and they just, they have no problem. They can thrive off of it, make all kinds of brood, and come springtime when you need them to be at their best to go out to forage for nectar, they're there. They're ready to roll.
It's been quite a fun journey over the last 5 or so years, because I remember when I first got into exploring bee nutrition and such, I'm sitting at the table and I had a cup of soy flour and I had a cup of sugar and some water and mixed it together, and it formed into this piece of cement, right? Just like, oh crap, this is no good. The bees aren't going to eat that. And I was like, how are we going to improve that? And we come from that to collaborating with this guy on the other side of the country, talking about the micros and the essentials, and talking not only that, but talking philosophy at the same time, and how we think the bees, interact with the environment. And it's actually environment is its stomach, bringing it all back to be able to access all these nutrients that we are somehow unable to provide for them. Like what is that secret recipe? That the whole journey with this fellow up until right now has been one of the more interesting things of this entire beekeeping career of mine. It's just focusing in on this layer of nutrition. It's something that we're very super focused on in the rest of the farm, the grain farm and the cattle farm. Everything is right down to the science. And then I look at my bees and I'm like, what the hell? We have no idea what's going on. So he's brought that conversation into my realm, and I've just had so much fun doing it. I tend not to talk as much about it online anymore because I listen to myself and I sound like a feed salesman. I don't want to sound like that. So I've kind of pulled away from that a little bit. So, I mean, I'm not trying to sell this product. I'm just using it. And I don't want to wreck a good thing. It's a good thing's going. So
it's
just
a
hang on for the ride.
People like us, Ian, that are trying to sell it need you to do that.
Well, if people want to use it, they can use it. It's up to them.
Yeah.
But all it does, I found, it just added that extra layer of those missing ingredients we feel that just helps the bees and utilize those nutrients. It's all about accessibility of the nutrients we're providing them, and it's not direct access. We feel it's more like there's a conversion right there, and we're not exactly sure how that is. So we're mixing all these things in to try to increase that conversion rate. Yeah, I'll just leave it there because I'm starting to sound like a feed salesman now. I'll just drink some more Kraken.
You don't have
really
to
helps, Ian.
Yeah, I don't think you have to convince anybody here, at least on the screen, as far as how good it is. I mean, like I said earlier, it converts sugar water into nectar. That's my analogy of it. And whether it actually, it gives it all the same things as real nectar. And the bees just, thrive off of it. And, I told Ashby Miller down there, I told him he knew about it, but he didn't know about it. And he says, I only listen to other beekeepers that have experience with it. And I said, listen, buy it and try it. I says, you're going to be really happy. You sell nukes like I do. You always want to give somebody 3 frames of brood. And I said, you're not going to have to hunt for the 3 frames of brood. It's going to be in that hive that you're in, that 5-frame nuke that you have started out with back in the fall. And so he said he's going to try for like three of his yards. And he was concerned about food consumption, being a big, strong super hive like that. And I said, in my hives, of course, I feed them in the fall. And I also, we have some other honey coming in the fall. I give all that to the bees, and my bees have plenty of food all the way up till springtime. And then by that time, the fresh nectar is coming in. So
that crazy son of a gun. I had trouble this spring with diseases of all kinds. Mm-hmm. And he was just, Ian, he sent me some stuff in the mail and said, try this stuff. So I had a test group going, and like tried to, everything was random as I went through my little test yard, and I applied this product he gave me. And I actually talked a little bit about it after I seen the preliminary results of it. But it was, he calls it, so this product he provided to me is supposed to improve the health of the bee, is supposed to enhance its natural, their natural immunity and a natural way of fighting off viral infection and stuff like that. And it was night and day. The product that I used, the colonies were 8 frames of bees, and I had a tough spring. They're just spectacular. And the colonies I didn't treat to it, I basically had to go into emergency measures and drop some brood frames in just to keep the colony going. And queen and everything is. So, I didn't talk any more about it because before I say anything about this, whatever you got going, I want to run in to see if I can duplicate it, because it was, wow. It was as obvious as tipping these colonies back. I shouldn't actually be talking about it right now because I didn't really apply the science. I just applied the product, and I'm looking at the results of like, boy, I'm going to try this again on a bigger scale just to see if I can duplicate it, if there's anything there, right?
So would you say, Ian, that you had sick bees?
They're sick bees, yeah.
They were sick bees, and you applied this medication. I'll call it a medication or whatever it is.
No,
Let's say a
medicine.
Treatment.
Yeah, medicine's different. This is very careful. This is not a medicine. Like it's nutrients, it's food, and it's
okay. Well, whatever. I'll call it a treatment, a generalized treatment,
or a supplement. Yeah,
supplement, whatever, and it made your bees healthier. And all that. So that's the, that's wonderful. I mean, if he can get it,
it wasn't the product he sells though. This is something harebrained that he just put through, and it seemed to work. And this is the reason why I'm saying this is what we need in our industry. We need, and Cayman talks about this too. We need guys to express free thought like this and bring the innovation. Like, we're the ones that are going to bring the innovation to our industry, and we need to follow through with it, right? And we need to promote that, and nobody else is doing it for us. So we need to be able to follow through with some of these ideas. We have tech transfer programs up here right now is doing exactly that, is just taking these ideas that are within the academic world and bringing it down to the applied sense to the beekeeper. We need to support more of that stuff, right?
And it's a shame that, so that little exchange there with the, it's not medicine. Whoa. Don't say the M word, right? Because that's kind of the touchy thing with the innovation, right?
No, it goes beyond that. There's I figured this out a couple months ago. There's this defined line in the sand that you can bring something, and it doesn't matter if it works or not. Someone's going to say, "Where's the science behind it?"
Where's with regulators?
People will only try
medicine. The USDA will shut it down, right? You have to.
It is important, though. I mean, you get a guy like me drinking Kraken right now, talking about something that works. We do need that science, though, to prove it, just to make sure that we're following the right path, right? Because science is science.
But back to the guy I was talking about, Super DFM, where and like Bob says, the other folks just say, "Well, my bees look good." Well, what do they call it? Anecdotal, I think it is.
Anecdotal.
Well, anecdotal. Okay.
Anecdotal.
I watched Frederick Dunn, and they had the lady on there that was a science person that was behind making Super DFM, and as you listen to it, well, he asked, where's the science behind it? Well, all it was field tested. That was it. There wasn't any, the way I understand it, wasn't any scientific experimentation. This is why it works or whatever, except for the fact that they were giving different types of bacteria or whatever, to act with the bee gut and all that kind of stuff. So even with that product, it's not highly tested, I'll say.
Yeah, so it needs to be backed up by good science then.
It was field tested, but that was it.
I know.
Here's the problem with good science. Good science costs millions of dollars and takes several years. That's
I
good
took
science.
it to a B club, and the president, he was all into case studies. He did a presentation, and he had a lot of case studies in his presentation. And I got up, to share about the APIS, and he wanted to know where the case studies were. It's like,
Well,
Brad put a video up on his Facebook page about I think it was a noted ecologist out of Australia or New Zealand who said these kids go into university and the only thing that they will believe is is it peer reviewed, is it science? If it's not,
Right.
they won't even listen to it. And unfortunately, that goes with everything in our world. Whatever community you're in, beekeeping, skateboarding, surfing, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's always that segment that's going to say, I want to see the study. And usually those are the ones that are at the hierarchy, near the top of the ladder, that control what can move up and what can't.
Well,
yeah, he was the president of that club. He shut me down.
Well, for me, and I'm kind of like what Clark's just said there. My field testing works for me, right?
Exactly.
I understand there's a need for science, right? There's a need for testing, but everything starts somewhere. And what I find is that there's y'all push my buttons on this thing. And I'm trying to not get on this mile-high soapbox that I really want to stand on right now. But screw it, it's my show. So the hypocrisy that is in beekeeping, where people are so critical of, oh, I gotta have the science, it's gotta be tested, or it's illegal, but I'm gonna shoot my boxes with more than the legal dose of oxalic acid because that's what I'm gonna do.
Because that's what your eyes and ears
side, but not okay on the other, and that's where I have my biggest hang up, right?
People
So
draw the line right before they believe their eyes and ears, and that's foolish. It's foolish. Ian talks about innovation all the time. Well, yeah, that's a good thing, except if you don't have the audience for it or people that will tip their toe in the pool to try it, it's going to go nowhere.
yeah, it's only innovative if certain people say it's innovative.
Correct.
That's at least in the YouTube environment.
I was talking about the hierarchy, that stepping up the ladder. There's people that will put the brakes on it, and to their advantage, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's just like the oxalic acid vapor treatment. It's 1 gram here in the States. Well, 10 years ago, we already knew what the Europeans, and that's another thing. Oh, if it isn't discovered in the United States, it can't be any good. Well, the Europeans figured out about oxalic acid before we ever did. And the fact that
Ian just fell asleep.
No.
You get enough cracking.
And I think he dropped his glass. But 10 years ago, we already knew that it took 2.25 grams per brood box to be effective. So that's science. It's already been discovered 10 years ago. But here in the United States, they can't get out of their act. We got to prove it to ourselves before we can allow that to happen. And it just don't make sense. It just.
Well, the whole thing is a balance. There's definitely a lot of value in the science. There's a lot of value in the anecdote. There's a lot of value in the field trials. However, boy, oh boy, you do a bunch of field trials and say, oh, goody, this worked. Guess what? Correlation doesn't prove causality. Do it again. That's what Ian said earlier. He said, can I reproduce this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we don't know. Right? So we've learned the effect Nicolas Cage has on people drowning in swimming pools. And is that science or is that correlation that doesn't prove causality?
And that goes with other science things. So Randy Oliver, I've heard him say it, you have your exploratory studies, and those studies need to be repeated.
Yeah.
And if the same conclusion isn't drawn twice,
Yeah.
So that's right. You have the good science, right?
You hit the nail on the head. I think that is one of the most important parts of this whole thing is if you can't reproduce it, it's nothing. All right.
Yeah,
You got to reproduce that.
Hey, Todd. Hey, Todd.
Yeah.
Send me your address. I'm Maccabees at Maccabees.com. Send me a text of your address.
Yes, sir.
I need your help with my little testing.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of science, yeah, we all got sidetracked. We were supposed to be drilling down on Charlie, right?
Try to crack Charlie with
Yeah.
or the secret sauce.
Charlie,
you wouldn't want to test
all
it
I'm
with
gonna say is
1,500 hives.
that-
Is all I'm saying.
That
You wouldn't wanna test
Tom
it.
Ayers talked to some Mr. Peck and some other science folks down there,
Connor.
and they were very interested in what he was saying. And I think didn't they ask you, Tom, to write a thesis or something another?
Yeah, he wanted me to show him all my stats I got so far on it, and exactly what my test is. And
well, what I kind of got out of this is Tom took an idea of his own and thought about fixing the problem in a different way. And
right,
these science folks were like, we never thought about it that way before. And they're really interested in his, here's a practical beekeeper that came up with an idea that has a possibility of working quite well. And he's trying to give it to the science people to, okay, take my idea and run with it and see if it doesn't work.
right. Let them do field studies and get a report going.
Mm-hmm. That's where a lot of value comes in the grassroots up, research comes for, because with scientists, they're like, all right, well, I think the best way to put it, so I don't know if any of you guys know Jeremy Felding. His YouTube channel is a mechanical engineer, really smart. And his analogy is you can go to somebody and you can say, design me a better lawnmower, right? And they'll design you a better lawnmower. You can go to somebody and you say, design me that'll take a 1/4 acre of grass and make it shorter, right? You just opened up the box. And with the grassroots up research, a lot of beekeepers have really different views, you know what I mean? And so you're not going to just get the new lawnmower, you're going to get the different views.
Well, and a good point there, Tom, too, is design me a better lawnmower. Well, define better. Some people think cheaper is better. Okay, design me a cheaper lawnmower. Well, that's easy. Just tell China to build it to be cheaper. It'll be a piece of crap, but it'll cut the lawn one time. But it's a better lawnmower because it's cheaper. Well, what's a better lawnmower, right? Is it a lawnmower like our grandfathers used and we're still using because they last 100 years? Is that a better lawnmower? It's all subjective.
My cows were really good lawnmowers. True story. Really good lawnmowers until they got to my basswood trees. No longer were they good lawnmowers.
Well, it would be like we've had sickle bar mowers for years, and Ian will understand this really good. And now they developed a mowing machine actually for over in England where it's always wet. Sickle bar mowers would choke up, so they made the disc binds where they're basically like little rotary mowers in a line, and it did better because it could get through the wet grass and it didn't choke up. Well, now that's what I had. We went from a hay bind. It was a combination mower conditioner with a sickle cutting apparatus on the front of it. Now we've got the same principle, only with a different style of knife cutting, which you can go 3 times faster. You don't have any choking up in the grass, even whether it's wet or dry. And we're doing the same thing, but only a much more efficient and better way of doing it. And it's that's what it takes to come up with different ideas.
Hey,
Well,
real fast.
what I found out that there weren't many scientists studying the reproductivity of a mite and what it takes for a mite to reproduce.
All right,
Tom,
so
can you send your
Not
email?
how they reproduce,
we're
but
starting.
what makes them capable to reproduce.
Tom, shoot me your email address again.
It's Maccabees@Maccabees.com.
Okay.
It's email@emailaddress.com.
Me@me.com.
I made that one because it's really easy.
But the yeah, so I mean, as far as like the science, yeah, I understand we need data, right? We do need data. We need to see things, but do we need it to the point that we have to wait for the science before we test it? And it just kind of seems that on some things, it's got to be approved, and on some things it doesn't have to be approved, and there's just not a standard, right? And that's everybody, right? So you could say, well, I need scientific data, but then we buy Honeybee Healthy and Brood Booster and all this stuff, and we put it in there, and there is no data for any of those products that everybody buys and uses. But that's okay.
Yeah, so that's what I was mentioning earlier. It depends on what you're calling somebody. Is it a medication or is it a supplement? Right? Those are the things that matter when it comes to the regulatory.
Well, I mean, in recent times, there's been a product called a supplement, and the stink on the drama that ensued about a supplemental product that happens to drop some mites because it's got thymol in it. It was just like Armageddon in the YouTube community. So it's just it's very selective.
Naysayers. Always going to be naysayers. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So
my question to that was the folks that were doing the hollering about it. Who deputized them as the bee police?
They did.
Well, it doesn't
did.
matter.
They deputized themselves.
And they've got their own agenda, so you can't let that deter you. You just got to move forward. You can't let any of that deter you.
I think the agenda was more or less
they're always going to be there.
It's they weren't making money.
It's a standard. It's a universal standard. It always is going to be. There's going to be naysayers for some reason or another. There's no way around that. It's always going to happen. So
I guess bottom line, the product's going to speak for itself, Bob?
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
That's all there is to it. Yeah. So I guess time will tell. Hey, good news. I've been hearing that in Canada, anyways, we might be getting that extended oxalic acid release approval. So we might be able to use this stuff legally up here.
Nice.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, in spring. So, well, I hope in spring. So that's coming right smartly here. That's good.
I almost bought a new pair of long johns for Manitoba today.
He's all concerned about, I don't have any warm clothes.
Hey, I went to Tractor Supply and they had the old fashioned, like the red long john with the flap in the back and all that. And I was like, I should get these just as a gag gift. Literally come off the plane wearing this long john with the flap in the back. Like I'm all with the hat with the ears on it, right? Like Cousin Eddie there, ready to go.
So with that extended release OA in Canada, do they define what the medium has to be? Like, does it have to be a blue shop towel? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's the sponge. I'm pretty sure it's a sponge, either the sponge or the shop towel. Okay. I forget which way they went. I'm pretty sure it's a sponge, but it's based solely on Randy Oliver's work there.
Is that going to be preloaded?
No, it's a good question. It's boy, now I'm getting out of my realm. It's something to do with using the existing label and just what's the word for it?
Delivery method.
Yeah, just altering the delivery method. Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading in the ABJ with Randy wrote in there that, and I didn't really read the articles. Didn't have time. Something about where they finally got approval from the EPA here in the States about.
I believe it. They ended up getting shot down in the end on that. I think.
I'm not sure.
It all comes down to the, it's only approved for this amount, and that's it. And Randy's clearly shows that it's actually a bigger amount, but it's actually in smaller increments. You know what I mean? But it's
Our Canadian Honey Council is quite
very
concerned
interesting.
because there's a lot of beekeepers across, well, Canada that I'm not being too open about it, but there's beekeepers using this product and using it very effectively. And it was time for the regulatory system to get ahead, catch up to the beekeepers' use. Like, what are you going to find, thousands of beekeepers across Western Canada? Or are you going to catch up with the label and the product? It's just a change of label, right? So
Yeah.
I'm glad to see it progressing like that.
In the U.S. with our regulations, so I worked for the federal government for 7 years, and with our regulation system, right, you have to have notice for proposed rule change and like all this stuff in line, and a lot of agencies. So I worked for the Federal Railroad Administration, and we had, this is off topic, but it's related. So workers were not doing something, it was against the regulation, but it was across the entire railroad industry, and so the agency use discretion against it rather than changing the rule, because it was so much work to change the rule that it was just easier to just ignore it. That's how our regulation system works, because it's so hard to change things.
Jeez.
Hey, Ian, I got a quick question. When you're feeding syrup in the early spring and it's still frozen, or you're still getting freezing temperatures and everything, how soon is too soon to feed liquid? Last year, the problem, I put fondant on, but the fondant dries up and turns rock hard, and I just don't feel they're getting much use out of that. And I was thinking last year, I sent you a video, you'd respond to it, but I had two of my largest colonies starve out in the beginning of the spring. They just were all brood, 100% brood. But I was thinking about starting feed this year a little bit earlier, 2-3 weeks earlier than I would normally do, to make sure that they're coming in stronger a bit, I guess. But
so what temperatures would that be?
Freezing overnight, and then probably warming up in the mid-30s during the day.
Yeah. I like to, I think people get the wrong impression in what I do. They think I'm feeding when it's like minus, 10 or -5 even. Feeding in the snow, and you'll see pails in my colonies and in the snow and such. And then one year I did that, and I got a lot of snow on top. It wasn't that I was feeding in the snow; it's just I was feeding and it snowed. So generally, I'll start feeding for a reason, for one thing, and that is if they're starving. Starve, or you're going to feed them. So you put a bucket up on top, and if they'll take the feed, they'll keep themselves going, or to stimulate them, and that's typically when we put them out of the shed. And we're seeing flight weather, right? And they're going and collecting food, bringing it back. So they're active. They're up and flying around. They're active like that. So what's too cold? I'm not sure if it's too cold. It's when they quit taking it. And that's generally when they cluster up and they, form that tight cluster. So what's that, around freezing or such? But I haven't seen any negative aspects to feeding when it's too cold. A lot of people will talk about negative aspects, and I haven't seen anything like that.
See, that's what I've heard rumors of, is like they're talking about too much moisture in the colonies and all this. But the problem we have is in early spring is the maple will start to pop, and they'll get, all this pollen rolling in, but they have no nectar. And so we have this where they're just flying like crazy. They've got pollen coming in, and then they'll starve to death because there's no sugar.
Yeah, so you got to give them food. If they don't have food, you got to give it to them. And they rear brood a lot better when they have fresh food coming in. They'll be sitting on honey, and they'll just kind of sit there and not really do a lot. They need that nest to be wet, right? They need that nest to have that fresh feed coming in. Otherwise, they won't brood. So if they can take it, give it to them if they can take it.
That's why I mentioned earlier that I'm going to try to start about 3 weeks before the maples start blooming, just so they have the food when that hits.
Yeah, we're a little bit colder than you guys. Not a ton, but we're a little bit colder than you guys. But like I said, I was just, in the past, I usually wait till like probably the second week of March. And this year I'm thinking like maybe the third week of February. And then the other thing I did different this year is I put a feeder shim on, and I'm thinking about doing the bag system inside that feeder shim.
The best thing you can do is test it out to see if it's going to work. Like, you're going to be feeding for a reason. So when you're feeding for the reason, then just see if there's a response. And if you see if there's a negative response, then back the hell away from that plan, right? maybe you have an area that's maybe a little more humid or wetter, and maybe you're going to see a negative consequence to that. I'm not sure what it would be, but test it out, because you got to figure that out for your own colonies.
Yeah, I was going to start with just putting like a half gallon in a Ziploc baggie on top of the feeder shim, and just see, or in the feeder shim, and just see if they're taking it and how they're taking it. But
if they're getting pollen, that's if they're bringing in pollen, then you should be giving them some sugar just to help them out.
Yeah, the last few years we've had such a warm winter that the maple trees have been popping early. Usually it's like the second week of March or something. Last year, I think it was like the last week of February, we had maple trees popping. So that's very unusual. But we had a 60-degree Christmas Day this year. I don't think I can ever remember having such a warm Christmas.
If you start feeding early like that, you got to be careful. That's another reason why I have pails on the spring. If you get that nest just chugging along, feeding sugar is probably one of the easiest things we can do as beekeepers to help them along. We focus on protein and we put patties. We put all this energy in putting patties, but we forget about the sugar they need. So when I'm building these springtime nests, and I have 2 or 3 frames open brood going, and I have this winter storm coming at me, I make sure there's a pail of syrup up on top, because those bees need that energy to be able to keep that nest going. And they'll take that syrup even if they're under 2 feet of snow. You've seen it 2 years ago, I think it was, in my video, like the colonies are under snow, the pail up on top, and they're feeding the sugar, they're pulling it down. If it get down to -10, they're not going to take it, of course, but it's getting up warmer through the day. They break cluster, go up, take the syrup, bring it down, feed the brood, keep things going. So they're going to take it, they're going to use it. They're going to have to get rid of the moisture, I guess, and everything, but it's you just got to be able to manage that if there's any consequence behind that. Yeah. So that's all I can say about that.
Hey,
but in the fall, if we're talking the fall, I have a rule in the fall that I have to have my colonies fed up by October. I have to have the majority of my feed in there fed and cured. That's really important. This is 2 different subjects. In the spring, it's more stimulative, it's more hand to mouth. It's not storage. In the fall, we're talking about cured food. And I need that done by October, because sometimes we have cold Octobers and I can't get my feed in to the colonies when it's cold in the fall, and they can't cure it properly. And if you don't have cured feed going into winter, that can be absolutely devastating. I'll notice in the sheds, I'll have colonies with feed dripping out the front, because it's starting to take on moisture, starting to ferment, starting to spoil, right? And it's not good. And it's not good for the bees to eat uncured feed as winter feed. So I have a rule in the fall, October 1st. You'll see I still have my pails on, but I'm just topping them up, just the top 5 or 10%. The majority of those colonies are fed right up in the fall. Yeah, 2 different things.
So have you had lower nosema counts coming out of the shed since you started using the Apis biologics and whatnot?
I would say, I'm not going to say the Apis dropped the spore counts, but I'm going to say that I was doing, these are farmer trials. I think you guys can appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I was testing between fumagillin and I was having trouble with a lot of variability, because there was almost like a bounce back from feeding the fumagillin. I was getting very frustrated with that. And I found when I started feeding protein patties, which included the supplements I put in there also, but when I started feeding the protein, I found more consistent management. Like the bees are able to manage the nosema a lot more consistently, and the bees were more resilient. So I quit, and I think what was happening was the fumagillin is an antibiotic, and I think it was killing their guts, killing the nosema, killing the guts, being reinfected by a comb or whatever, and then the nosema just had a heyday, and the bounce back was almost twofold from when it first started. I just had a lot of trouble with that, so I cut that out, and I started feeding protein, and I've had tremendous success until last spring. Last spring, my sickness, I'm not sure what happened, but something happened, and I wasn't able to, or the bees weren't able to control that nosema infection, and the nosema just overtook everything. And by the time I did treat to kill the nosema and allow the bees to regain themselves, it was too late in the season. I could hardly gain myself. So I'll say that with that caveat, because last year was my exception to that rule. Yeah.
Gotcha. So less about syrup, more about protein.
Well, night, everyone.
Purely protein. Yeah. With the Nosema, it was a protein.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to tell him I sent that email.
All right,
And I'm
guys.
not the only beekeeper that talks about that either. A lot of beekeepers, especially some of the bigger guys in the south, they'll talk about how protein feeding will help with the Nosema to a certain extent, though. All right. And we have to recognize when colonies get sick, we need to be able to treat the sickness with medications.
Well, tomorrow's Tuesday. Our regular stream will be over on Lee's channel tomorrow night on Kodiak Farms Bees. So if you are interested in joining us tomorrow night over there, we'll be there at 8 o'clock. And we've been going for, 2 hours and 16 minutes or so. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the stream off for tonight. And I appreciate everybody for coming and hanging out with us for a while tonight. And enduring the chat. And
that was a good live tonight, Bob. Really great conversations. Thanks for having it.
Yeah. And I'll have mine. I'll be back on this coming Friday too at 8 p.m. Standard Time.
I gotta say, as the new guy here, these 2 hours really fly by here. It feels like it's been half an hour.
Well, when you're part of it, right? Sometimes those 2 hours feel like 10 hours. Just depends on the night.
Depends on the subject and everything and how.
When you get in here and everyone's like, well, it's winter and our bees aren't doing anything, and then all of a sudden there's silence in between, and then you got to listen to Bob fill the blanks, and then it's just it takes a long time. But for the most part, we try to keep it full, keep it rolling.
And there's been a lot of new folks that seem to be coming in. I don't know who West Honey is and Square Bee Farms.
Well, if you notice at the top, this is actually being streamed to 4 channels right now.
Yeah, it's streaming through my channel and
mine too.
So Todd and
maybe 3 or 4 people watching from my channel.
That's probably Sourwoods, right? S there.
Well, it actually pops up. Charlie's pops up before yours. When I pull up mine on YouTube.
That's because I have you blocked on my YouTube channel. No, I'm just kidding.
There's a reason for everything, Robert.
No, I don't know. It just depends on who you interact with the most, I think, is how that works. But I don't have you blocked. I don't know why I did that.
Yeah, like I say, but go with the rest of these folks, Bob. That you have it. God. You and Lee have it each Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Eastern Standard. It's Kodiak Farms or Walker Bee Ranch on Tuesdays. Thursdays could be anybody.
Open.
And then Friday nights is Solomon Charlie's Bee Farm.
He's frozen right there.
We stream a lot.
We stream a lot.
Oh, screen capture Ian. That was a great
screen.
All right. Well,
that's a bummer.
Yeah, we do this several times a week. If you're new, we appreciate you coming. And hey, we put a link up in the top of the chat on YouTube, at least on whoever's streaming it. So if it's mine, it'd be in mine, where you can come join us if you want to come in.
Everybody's invited, even on mine.
So we have a few basic rules, though. If you come in, talk. It is a chat. And, take turns. And
don't watch TV while you're trying to participate in the chat.
Yeah, no TV, like no video games, no carnivals.
If you're going to be noisy, or if it's in a noisy place, mute yourself until you need, you
no building frames while you get your mic open.
Or tanks or anything like that.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to call it for this evening. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next stream. Thanks.
Stay in here.
Good night, everyone.